the desire to have and not to have. You want a lot, you get little. This childish teasing has a basis. Only I would paraphrase it like this. The more you want, the less you will get when you want something too much. So much so that you are willing to risk everything. You create a huge excess potential that upsets the balance. Balanced forces will throw you onto the line of life, where there is no trace of the desired object. If you paint a picture of the behavior of a person obsessed with desire at the energy level, it will look something like this. A boar is trying to catch a blue bird. He really wants to get her, and at the same time he licks his lips, grunts loudly, and digs the ground with impatience. Naturally, the bird flies away. If the catcher walks next to the bluebird with an indifferent look, then he has a very high chance of grabbing it by the tail. 3 forms of desire can be distinguished. The first form is when a strong desire turns into a firm intention to have and act. Then the wish comes true. The desire potential dissipates in this case, because its energy is spent on action. In the second form, it is an inactive languid desire, which represents excess potential in its purest form. It hangs in the energy field and, at best, uselessly expends the energy of the sufferer, and at worst, attracts various troubles. The most insidious is the third form, when a strong desire becomes dependent on the object of desire. High significance automatically creates a relationship of dependence, which generates a strong excess potential, causing an equally strong counteraction of equilibrium forces. Usually attitudes like this are created. If I achieve this, my situation will become much better. If I don't achieve this, my life loses all meaning. If I do this, I will show myself and everyone what I'm worth. If I don't do this, I'm worthless. If I get this, it will be very great. If I don't get this, it will be very bad, and so on in various variations. By getting involved in a relationship of dependence on the object of desire, you are drawn into such a stormy whirlpool, where you will simply become exhausted in the struggle for what you want. In the end, you will achieve nothing and give up on your desire. Balance has been restored, and the balancing forces are absolutely indifferent to the fact that you suffered from this. And this happened because of your strong need for your wish to come true. Desire was on one side of the scale, and everything else was on the other. Only the first form can be fulfilled when desire turns into pure intention, free from excess potentials. We are all accustomed to the fact that in this world, you have to pay for everything. Nothing comes for free. In fact, we only pay for the excess potentials that we ourselves create. In the space of options, everything is free. Since we express ourselves in such terms, the payment for the fulfillment of desire is the lack of significance and relationships of dependence. To move to the line of life, where the desired turns into reality, only the energy of pure intention is enough. We'll talk about intention later. And now, let's just note that pure intention is the unity of desire and action in the absence of significance. For example, the free intention to go to the newsstand to buy a newspaper is pure. The higher the events are rated, the more likely failure is. If you place a lot of importance on what you have and value it very much, then the balancing forces are likely to take it away. If what you want to get is also too important, then don't expect to get it. It is necessary to lower the bar of significance and importance. For example, you are crazy about your new car. You blow off specks of dust from it. Take care of it. Take care of it. Are afraid of scratching it. In general, you cherish and idolize it. As a result, excess potential is created. After all, it was you who endowed the car with such great significance. But in fact, in the energy field, its significance is zero. As a result, and unfortunately, the balancing forces will soon find a fool who will cripple your car. Or you yourself, being too cautious, will not fit in anywhere. You just have to stop idolizing your car and start treating it normally, and the danger for it will sharply decrease. Being casual does not mean being careless. You can take perfect care of your car without making an idol out of it. There is another aspect to the strong desire to have. There is an opinion, if you really want it, you can achieve anything. It would seem that one can assume that a very strong desire will take you to the line of life where it is fulfilled. However, it is not. If your desire has turned into addiction, a kind of psychosis, a hysterical desire to achieve your goal at any cost, it means that in your soul you do not believe in its fulfillment, and therefore you are broadcasting radiation with strong interference. If there is no faith, you try your best to convince yourself, pumping up the potential even more. There is a danger of spending your entire life on the work of your life. The only thing that can be done here is to reduce the significance of the goal. Go to her like going to a kiosk for a newspaper. A strong desire to avoid something is a logical continuation of dissatisfaction with the outside world or with oneself. The stronger the need, the more powerful the excess potential. The more you don't want it, the more likely it is to collide. Balanced forces do not care how balance is achieved. And it can be achieved in two ways, either to move you away from a collision or to push you away. It is better to consciously give up rejection so as not to create potential. But that is not all. When you think about what you don't want, you emit energy at the frequency of the line where it will definitely happen. You always get what you don't actively want. This is literally what happens. A person is at a ceremonial reception at the embassy. Everything around is decorous, well-mannered, balanced. And suddenly, he begins to wildly wave his arms, stomp his feet, and desperately shout that he does not want to be taken out of here this minute. Naturally, security appears. The eccentric is taken by the arms. He resists and screams, but is immediately taken out. This is too exaggerated a picture for reality, but on the energetic level, everything happens with the same intensity. Let's look at another example. Let's say you are woken up in the middle of the night by the noise of your neighbors. You want to sleep, go to work tomorrow, and then the fun is in full swing. The more you want them to shut up there, the more likely it is that this will drag on for a long time. The angrier you get, the wilder the fun will become. If you hate them enough, you can guarantee that nights like this will happen more and more often. To solve this problem, you can use the method of failure or damping of the pendulum. Extinguishing will happen if you treat the situation with irony. Or you can ignore it altogether, not show any emotion or interest. Then the pendulum will fail and the potential will not arise. May it bring you peace of mind to know that you have a choice and know how to use it. Soon, the neighbors will calm down. This is how it works. You can check it. Now, you can analyze where you yourself overestimated the importance and what problems you got as a result. If things are really bad, ignore the importance, shake off the relationship of dependence, and stubbornly broadcast positive energy. The worse it is now, the better. This is how you can assess the situation if you think that you have suffered a major defeat. Rejoice. In this case, the balancing forces are on your side because their task is to compensate for the bad with the good. It cannot be bad all the time, just as it cannot be good all the time. No one can ride the wave of luck all their life. On an energetic level, it looks something like this. They attacked you, cursed you, took everything away, beat you, and then handed you a bag of money. The more damage you suffer, the more money you will find in the bag. Guilt. Guilt is excess potential in its purest form. The fact is that in nature, there are no such concepts as good or bad. Both good and bad actions are equivalent for equilibrium forces. Equilibrium is restored in any case if excess potential arises. You did something bad, realized it, felt guilty, I need to be punished, created potential. You did well, realized it, felt a sense of pride in yourself, I need to be rewarded, you also created potential. Balanced forces have no idea what to punish or reward for. They only eliminate the created inhomogeneities in the energy field. The price for feeling guilty will always be punishment in one form or another. If it is not there, then punishment may not follow. Unfortunately, feeling proud of a good deed will also lead to punishment rather than reward. After all, balancing forces need to eliminate the excess potential of pride, and reward will only strengthen it. An induced feeling of guilt, that is, introduced from the outside by the right people, creates a potential in the square, since a person is already tormented by his conscience, and then the wrath of the righteous falls. And finally, the unreasonable feeling of guilt associated with the innate tendency to be responsible for everything creates the highest excess potential. In this case, you should not feel remorse at all after all. The reason is simply far-fetched. A guilt complex can greatly ruin life because a person is constantly exposed to the action of balancing forces, that is, all kinds of punishments for imaginary offenses. That is why there is such a saying, arrogance is the second happiness. As a rule, balancing forces do not touch people who are not tormented by remorse. But I really want God to punish the scoundrels. It would seem that justice should triumph, and evil should be punished. However, nature does not know a sense of justice, no matter how sad it is. On the contrary, decent people with an innate sense of guilt are constantly beset by new misfortunes, and unscrupulous and cynical villains often enjoy not only impunity, but also success. The feeling of guilt necessarily gives rise to a scenario of punishment, and without the knowledge of your consciousness. In this scenario, your subconscious mind will lead you to a reckoning. At best, you will get caught, or get minor bruises, or some problems will appear. At worst, there may be an accident with serious consequences. That's what guilt does. It carries only destruction. There is nothing useful or creative in it. There is no need to torment yourself with remorse. This will not help matters. It is better to do so as not to feel guilty later. And if it has already happened, it is pointless to suffer in vain. No one will be better off because of it. The biblical commandments are not morality in the sense that one must behave well, but recommendations on how to act so as not to upset the balance. It is we, with our rudiments of child psychology, who perceive the commandments as if mother told us not to be naughty, otherwise she will put us in a corner. On the contrary, no one is going to punish people who have done wrong. By disturbing the balance, people create problems for themselves, and the commandments only warn about this. As mentioned earlier, the feeling of guilt serves as a thread by which a person can be pulled by pendulums, and especially by manipulators. Manipulators are people who act according to the formula, you must do what I say because you are guilty, or I am better than you because you are wrong. They try to impose a feeling of guilt on their ward in order to gain power over him, or for self-affirmation. Outwardly, these people look correct. For them it has long been established what is good and what is bad. They always say the right words, so they are always right. All their actions are also impeccably correct. However, it must be said that not all good people are prone to manipulation. Where does the need for manipulators to teach and control come from? It is due to the fact that in their souls they are constantly tormented by doubts and uncertainty. They skillfully hide this internal struggle both from others and from themselves. The lack of inner core, which truly good people have, pushes manipulators to self-affirmation at the expense of others. The need to teach and manage arises from the desire to strengthen one's position by belittling the ward. Dependency relationships are created. It would be great if the balancing forces gave the manipulators what they deserved for this. However, excess potential occurs only where there is tension, but no movement of energy. In this case, the manipulator's ward gives him his energy, so there is no potential, and the manipulator acts with impunity. As soon as someone expresses their readiness to accept the feeling of guilt, the manipulators immediately stick and begin to suck energy. In order not to fall under their influence, you just need to give up the feeling of guilt. You don't have to make excuses to anyone, and you don't owe anyone anything. If there is really guilt, you can be punished, but just not remain guilty. Do you owe your loved ones anything? Also know, after all, you take care of them out of conviction and not out of coercion. This is a completely different matter. Give up the tendency to make excuses, if you have one. Then the manipulators will understand that there is nothing to hook you on, and they will leave you alone. By the way, the initial cause of an inferiority complex is a feeling of guilt. If you experience inferiority in any way, it means that this inferiority is determined in comparison with others. An investigative process is initiated where you yourself act as a judge over yourself. But it only seems that you yourself are the judge. Something else is actually happening. Initially, you are predisposed to take the blame no matter what. Simply, in principle, they agree to be guilty. And if so, you agree that you can be a defendant and be punished. By comparing yourself to others, you allow them to take advantage of you. Notice that you yourself gave them this right. You allowed others to believe that they are better than you. They most likely don't think so, but you yourself have decided so and are acting as a judge of yourself on behalf of others. It turns out that they are the ones judging you because you yourself put yourself on trial. Take back your right to be yourself and get out of the dock. No one will dare to judge you if you yourself do not consider yourself guilty. Only you can voluntarily give others the privilege of being your judges. It may seem that I am engaged in empty demagogy here. After all, if there are real shortcomings, there will always be people who will notice it. That's right, there really are. But only if they sense that you are predisposed to take the blame for your shortcomings. If you even for a second realize that you are guilty of being worse than others, they will definitely feel it. And vice versa. If you are free from feelings of guilt, no one will think of asserting themselves at your expense. Here, the very subtle influence of excess potential on the surrounding energy environment is manifested. From the point of view of common sense, this is difficult to believe 100%. However, I cannot prove anything in words. If you don't believe me, check it out. There are two other interesting aspects of guilt: power and courage. People who have this feeling always submit to the will of other people who do not have it. If I am potentially ready to admit that I may be guilty of at least something, I am subconsciously ready to be punished, which means I am ready to submit. And if I don't have a feeling of guilt, but have a need for self-affirmation at the expense of others, I'm ready to become a manipulator. I don't want to say at all that people are divided into manipulators and puppets. Just notice the pattern. Lords and rulers have the least developed sense of guilt, or none at all. The feeling of guilt is alien to cynics and other people deprived of conscience. Walking over heads or corpses is their method. It is not surprising that unscrupulous individuals very often come to power. This again does not mean that power is bad, and all people in power are bad. Maybe your happiness also lies in becoming the favorite of the pendulum. Everyone decides for themselves how to weigh their conscience. No one has the right to tell you about this. But in any case, one must abandon the feeling of guilt. Another aspect, courage, is a sign of the absence of guilt. The nature of fear lies in the subconscious, and its cause is not only the frightening unknown, but also the fear of punishment. If I am guilty, I am potentially willing to be punished, and therefore I am afraid. In fact, brave people not only do not suffer from remorse, but also do not suffer from the slightest feeling of guilt. They have nothing to fear because their inner judge claims that their cause is just. A fearful victim, on the contrary, has a completely different position. I am not sure that I am doing the right thing. I can be blamed. Anyone can punish me. Feelings of guilt, even the weakest and most deeply hidden, open the subconscious gates to punishment. If I feel guilty, then I potentially agree that the robber or bandit has the right to attack me, and therefore I am afraid. People have come up with an interesting way to dispel the excess potential of guilt: a request for forgiveness. It really works. If a person carries a feeling of guilt, he strives to retain negative energy and builds up excess potential. Having asked for forgiveness, the person releases it and allows the energy to dissipate. Asking for forgiveness, admitting your mistakes, atonement for sins, confession, all these are methods of getting rid of the potential for guilt. By writing out an indulgence for yourself in one way or another, a person lets go of the accusation he himself created, and it becomes easier for him. It is only necessary to ensure that repentance does not become dependent on manipulators. They are just waiting for this. By asking for forgiveness, you admit your mistake to reset the potential. Manipulators will try to remind you of this mistake repeatedly, provoking you to maintain a feeling of guilt. Do not succumb to their provocations. You have the right to ask for forgiveness for a mistake, only the one and last time. Giving up feelings of guilt is the most effective means of survival in an aggressive environment. In prison, in a gang, in the army, on the street. It is not for nothing that there is an unspoken rule in the criminal world. Don't believe. Don't be afraid. Don't ask. This rule calls for not creating excess potential. At the heart of the potentials that can serve you poorly in an aggressive environment is a feeling of guilt. You can protect your safety by demonstrating your strength. In a world where the fittest survive, this works. But this is too extensive a method. It is much more effective to exclude the potential for punishment from the subconscious. The following example can be given as an illustration. In the former Soviet Union, political prisoners were deliberately placed with criminals to break their will. But it turned out that many of the political prisoners, being outstanding individuals, not only did not become victims of bullying, but also gained authority among criminals. The point is that personal independence and dignity are valued more than strength. Many people have physical strength, but personal strength is a rare phenomenon. The key to your own dignity is the absence of guilt. True personal power lies not in the ability to take someone by the throat, but in how much a person can allow himself to be free from guilt. The famous Russian writer Anton Pavlovich Chekhov said, "I am squeezing a slave out of myself drop by drop." This phrase emphasizes the desire to get rid of guilt. To get rid of means to fight. However, in transurfing, there is no place for struggle and violence against oneself. Another thing is preferable: to refuse, that is, to choose. There is no need to squeeze out the feeling of guilt. It is enough to simply allow you to live in accordance with your own credo. Nobody has the right to judge you. You have the right to be yourself. If you allow yourself to be yourself, the need to make excuses will disappear, and the fear of punishment will dissipate. Then a truly amazing thing will happen. No one will dare to offend you. Moreover, wherever they are, in prison, in the army, in a gang, at work, on the street, in a bar, anywhere, you will never find yourself in a situation where someone threatens violence. Others will be subjected to violence in one form or another from time to time, but you will not, because you have expelled the feeling of guilt from your subconscious, which means that on these lifelines, the punishment scenario simply does not exist. Like this.